Come on, y'all. Let's get the goods. Yo! What? What the? Y'all some little tortoises, huh? Damn! Look at you. Y'all adorable, man. Bad Bernie got some turtles on the payroll.
No, we don't work for Bernie. We're here to find you.
I can't believe there are other mutants like us.
This is wild. I mean, this is crazy. Like, let me guess. 15 years ago, right? Some sludge was dumped in the sewer, and y'all came from that.
Well, we prefer the term ooze, but yeah.
It's like more like, it's just nicer.
It rolls off the tongue better, yeah.
Ooze. It's nice, right? It's ooze.
Damn. Ooze. I like that. I like ooze. So look. That same ooze made me, okay? My dad, Baxter Stockman, he's the one who dumped the ooze down the drain, baby. So technically, we cousins. Hold up, cuz.
I've always wanted a cousin.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine. And as usual, when he's over here, it's a double feature time. Last episode, we talked about TMNT. And today, we're going to be talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, with the B-Hyphen himself, Mr. Kelen Conley. Kel, how you doing?
I'm great, Perry. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. We had just a 5-minute break for us, but it's been a week for the listeners. So I went and checked it on my kids. They're not killing each other, so we're all good over on my end.
And I said goodnight to my child, and she took my fork upstairs, so everything's right for me as well.
She took your fork upstairs?
I was eating a salad in between pods. I was like, will you take my fork and put it upstairs?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like she took a fork to bed or something with her.
Yeah, she has a emotional support fork that she likes to sleep with and, cuddle it
Honestly,
tight.
It wouldn't surprise me because my daughter does stuff like that. My son too. They'll do stuff like that. They'll just have like this random object and they'll take him to bed. I'm like, what are you doing?
Like, why is this in bed with you? Right.
Yeah.
We've both been there for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we don't have to go back and tell people everything about you, but anything else that you're interested in lately? Anything else grabbing your attention these days?
I actually have been listening to the new Snoop Dogg album that Dr. Dre produced. It is a sequel to his 1992 album Doggy Style. This album is called Missionary, and if you're into Snoop Dogg and some Dr. Dre beats, and you don't go in with super high expectations, which I guess a lot of people have because they're like, these beats are trash. No, it's honestly a really good hip hop album that I think not all ages can enjoy, but it can be enjoyed by most the average hip hop fan. So I've been enjoying that album recently.
So, man, Snoop Dogg has really kind of mellowed out, right? He went from Doggy Style to now Missionary.
Hey, man, when you get up there in those years, man, it's just easier to just keep it simple, Just keep it simple and keep it moving. Get back to the Olympics. That's what Snoop's goal is. Sooner it's over, sooner you can get back to smoking, I guess. I don't know.
Anyway, for my part, last episode we talked about how, the Superman trailer came out and it's been really grabbing my attention. So it's gotten me on a Superman kick lately. And I've been I had started to rewatch a Smallville a while back and I just kind of faded out of it and I dipped back into it now. And so I finished up season 4 and, really kind of dug it a lot more than I did the first time around. So I was really kind of, enjoying that, going back and rewatching that. And funny enough, my son is getting into it too. Like he doesn't understand anything that's happening. Several times he saw Clark doing weird stuff on the show and he was calling him a ghost. So
I mean,
my son isn't.
Smallville Clark Kent definitely did some weird stuff, so I could definitely see where he's getting the ghost from. That's hilarious.
I mean, my son he's about 2.5, and he calls everything a ghost, basically. So like anytime there's a shadow or anything dark, he's like his own shadow. Every time he sees his shadow, he's like, it's a ghost, it's a ghost. I'm like, no, buddy, that's your own shadow. That's just you. So he sees anything weird happening on TV, and he's like, ghost. I'm like, no.
I know there's a lot of times that he probably felt like a ghost, but no, Smallville Clark Kent was not a ghost. He was just trying to find his wings is all he was trying to do.
But yeah, I finished up season 4 and I enjoyed it a lot more than I did the first time around because that was the season they introduced Lois. And back when it was first on the air, when I saw that, I'm like, all right, the show's kind of jumped the shark now because now they're bringing in Lois Lane while Clark's still in high school. And I felt like that was taking things a bridge too far. But now rewatching it now, separated from, I'm like, yeah, actually, I really kind of digging Erica Durance as Lois on this. The banter she has with Tom Welling is a lot of fun. The Lex stuff is really cool. We get to see a pre-supernatural Jensen Ackles in that season, so that was kind of fun going back and rewatching that. But
I think that might have been the last season I actually watched of Smallville, honestly, because the last thing I remember from that show was, and it might be off. I remember something crashing, like in the season finale, like into the ground or something. And was it around prom or something, and everything happened,
yes,
or was there no prom?
That was like right after their graduation. They had
okay.
a meteor shower. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the last thing I remember watching, and I don't think I've seen an episode of Smallville that wasn't a prior rerun since. So I it's been a long time since I watched Smallville.
But I liked a lot more this time around. The weird Lana witch stuff aside, that was just bizarre.
Yeah. So they definitely didn't know what to do with Lana a lot of times.
No, they were definitely kind of reaching when they got to that season.
Yeah, because I mean they couldn't put them together, so it's like, but you got Lana right here, and then you got Chloe, and you got Lois running around. So I mean there was so much to choose from, but so little they could do with them,
Yeah. Well, it's funny when I'm rewatching it. I was thinking this when I was especially the early seasons, like seasons 1 through 3. And you watch those shows, and you're looking at Michael Rosenbaum as Lex Luthor, and you're seeing how everybody in the town treats him. And I posted this on Blue Sky. I'm just like, you know what? These early seasons, it's really the story of this guy who comes from money, who is, he comes from this abusive father, and it really kind of feels like he wants to get back at his abusive father by using his money to help this town. And everybody in town is a total shithead to him, so he ends up becoming an evil bastard. Like
I know. I like, you caused this. I was trying to help y'all, and y'all just couldn't treat me with a little modicum of respect. So
I know,
absolutely.
I mean, well, especially when he's telling Clark like, Clark, there's all this weird stuff that always happens in Smallville, and Clark's like, Lex, you're delirious. It's like, dude, you're gaslighting him right to his fucking face. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, price you got to pay when you got superpowers and you don't know to do it yourself. Especially when you're an angsty CW teenager. I mean, it's rough out here, man.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny because back when the show was first on, because I was about the same. I was a little bit older than Clark was, because Clark started freshman year. That show came out, and when I was a senior, but. It's funny going back, because back then I related so hard to Clark, and watching it now I relate a lot more to like Lex and Jonathan.
Right. Right. It's funny how when you rewatch any old show like that, and it's like characters you used to love, and then you watch something again, it's like, yeah, I'm completely on board with this character now. Because honestly, I used to, like, first time I watched Scrubs, I used to think Elliot Reed was like bee's knees. I was like, oh, Elliot's great. She's a little weird, but she's great. And now when I watch Scrubs, still love Elliot, but my God, Elliot, like, get a fucking clue. Get a clue, Elliot. Please.
Yeah.
Please.
Oh yeah, I relate so much harder to Dr. Cox since I became a teacher.
Oh, I know you do. I know you do. Absolutely.
And on Smallville too, it's just like, every time Clark is like, whining about Lana, it's like, Jesus, Clark, shut the fuck up already.
I know. I mean, it was just Dawson's Creek with Superman.
It was
a lot of times. So they're just rinsing and washing. They just had superpowers in this one.
Yeah. I mean, there's I don't want to completely bad. I'm enjoying the rewatch. It's just there is these little things that pop up every now and then. You're just like, come on, man.
Yeah, not everything can age as gracefully as us, buddy.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Anyway, like I mentioned, today we are talking about, since this is youth oriented anyway, this is a transition, because now we're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, the most recent Turtles movie to come out, right after. We talked about TMNT last episode, and in the space between, we obviously had different animated interpretations. There was the 2012 one we mentioned on TV. There was it Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I think, was another one that came on in there.
Yep.
There's like another one that has come out since as well. And then we also had in the movies, though, we did have which I actually asked you if you wanted to come on and talk about that, but you're just like, nope.
I made it through one of them. And I didn't even get, because the second one is a little better than the first one. Like, is that the consensus when it comes to the Michael
Slightly,
Bays?
yeah, yeah.
I made it through the first one, and I was like, okay, it was cool seeing Megan Fox, but I don't need to see any more of this. And
Yeah.
that was about it. That was the extent of it. Those are not my turtles. They had their moments, but not for me. Not for me.
Yeah, I had the same reaction. Like I did sit through both of them. I had a modicum of hope for the second one because they were bringing in Stephen Amell to play Casey Jones and all that, and I'm just like, all right, maybe this will be better. Maybe they kind of found their footing. Maybe it'll be, and nah, it's like modicum better, but it's still just like you got these monster turtles
I was gonna say
around.
like they're the size of Bumblebee from the
Mhm.
live action turtle or the Transformers movies. And yeah, I don't want my mutants to be monsters.
Yeah,
I want the turtles to be my height, and I don't need them with dripping all kinds of armor and you know
yeah, yeah. We don't need the Jim Lee turtles designs. If you remember those Playmates
no,
figures
oh
from the
my
90s.
gosh. Yes.
Which for some
Yes.
reason they never had the Leonardo figure. They did have the and he had done a design for Leo, but they just
Mhm.
never was produced or something like that. I can't remember why.
Who knows? Who knows, man? But no,
Mm.
I passed so hard on the Michael Bay movies.
Yeah, good reason. Good reason.
And only reason I watched the first one was because Angel got me the first live action one for Christmas or birthday, and I was like, thanks. I was like, I gotta watch it. It was like one of the first Blu-rays that she ever got me, and I was
It's the
like, I
turtles. You
gotta
love the
watch it.
turtles.
Yeah, I do, baby. I do. You're absolutely right.
So then after those movies, they decided to reboot the series again because the
Mhm.
second one didn't do so well, and uh they talked to Playmates Toys, and Playmates actually suggested that it should be go back to animation too. So
Shout out to Playmates, man.
yeah, so Playmates decided to go. So they decided to go with an animated director, and so this one they brought in Seth Rogan and Evan Goldberg to kind of like spearhead the project. So before we
Mhm.
dive too much into this movie, what's kind of like your thoughts on Seth Rogen in general?
I am a fan of Seth Rogen. Um, I his early 2000s stoner movies. I really enjoyed Knocked Up. I always find myself going back to that one a lot. Um, I do like his turn in 40-Year-Old Virgin. But as far as his writing ability, like going into Superbad and this film, obviously, and then the other films he's done, I miss Green Hornet. Wasn't trying to take that bullet. So, um, all the good on you for doing it. Finally, Seth Rogen. But I do enjoy his work. I do believe he cares about the source material, and as much as people look at him and say, "Oh, he's just a goofy stoner," he's now our age goofy stoner who not only makes money like selling marijuana and making marijuana products, he also, when he comes to writing and acting, he's pretty serious about his craft. And I think that was pretty evident in the writing throughout the film. It was very snappy. I thought it was very funny. I heard the Rogan and Goldberg style throughout. So personally, you say Seth Rogen's involved in something, you're probably going to pique my interest more than turn me away.
Yeah, I feel a lot of the same way. Like I enjoy him. Everyone says like, "Oh, he just plays the same stupid stone." Yeah, but he's entertaining when he does it. So it's like I
Yeah.
never get that complaint. It's like he plays the same character in every movie. I'm like, well, if he does it in a good way, if it's entertaining, then who cares? I mean, he's not trying to reinvent the wheel here, and he is entertaining in those movies. Like Knocked Up, I think is a great film.
Mm-hmm.
Even the interview. I thought the interview was really creative and really ballsy actually. So
Yeah.
I really dug the interview a lot, even though everybody else seemed to have hated it. I feel like I'm the only one who liked it.
I enjoyed This Is the End, as madcap and as silly as that was. Pineapple Express is fine. Didn't really grab me, but 9 times out of 10, if Seth Rogen's in a film, like what was the one he did with was it Charlize Theron he did a few years
Long
ago?
Shot, yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
mention that. Yeah.
Long Shot is a great romantic comedy. Like
Yeah.
I just threw that on. I was like, oh, it's Charlize Theron and Seth Rogen, and I was on that movie start to finish, and
I
I
was
thought that was
surprised how
really
much I
well
liked
done.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
yeah, same thing, yeah. But beyond that, like behind the camera, and yeah, I think everybody gives him way too much shit for Green Hornet, and yeah, Green Hornet was not that great. We went back, we watched it, covered it a while back on the show, and yeah, not a good movie, not a very good movie. But honestly, I don't blame that so much on Rogan. I think just like everything around that movie was, you know, the people involved, they clearly wanted it to be more of a comedy. I think if Rogan was involved seriously in that from like the writing standpoint, I think it would have been a lot better. And when I say that to people and they look at me sideways, you know, I remind them, this is the guy who did, you know, if you like The Boys, you like Invincible, you like Preacher, those things are all Seth Rogen. He's very serious about these comic book properties. Like he knows this stuff, and he's very, and he's good at doing it. Now, so I feel like the kind of blowback he gets just for being Seth Rogen is, I think, a little overblown. But I think he's doing a lot of good work behind the camera.
I definitely think so too, because he gives a shit is what it is, and he's kind of stepped into that role that Kevin Smith had for years and years prior to the Too Fat to Fly thing, and then him before he did Red State, like when he kind of had his breakdown and he's like, oh, I don't trust the studios, and then he did Tusk and all that weird shit. Like for years, like Kevin Smith was the guy that people went to because Kevin Smith wrote the punchy dialogue. Kevin Smith loved these characters. Like these are people that like they trusted Kevin Smith with their vision when it came to these properties, even though he didn't always carry it to the finish line. There's a lot of work that he put in those areas just because of his cred. And I feel like Seth Rogen has moved into that as well. But the thing with Seth Rogen is like, and unlike Kevin Smith, who was always like Indie Till I Die, Miramax Weinstein's, we know how that worked out. But still, like that was always his flag that Kevin Smith wore. Like Rogan and Goldberg have been able to do that under the major movie studios, which is something that's really interesting. And then the fact that they're now at the stage in their career where somebody will come to them and be like, hey, we want to do this Ninja Turtles live action movie. Would you like to be involved? Because we respect your opinion. That just shows how much care that they put into their product, as dumb and silly as they may be in their regular everyday life. Like these guys actually care about the finished product.
Yeah. So that brings us to Mutant Mayhem, which I was very excited about for all the reasons I mentioned about Seth Rogen being involved in it. And it's a fun movie. It's definitely a lot better than the Michael Bay films. I mean, yeah, definitely overall one of the better Turtles films. Like if we could probably do a ranking when we get to the end, but I think like this would probably be in the higher echelons of my rankings.
Okay.
All that being said, I still got some issues with it. How about you? What did you think of it?
Okay. I will say very good Ninja Turtles movie. So let's get that out of the way. Like it's a good Ninja Turtles movie. This is a good jumping on point for a lot of the younger fans who are just discovering Ninja Turtles, or they watch Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then they're like, oh, there's a live action movie. I want to check that out. Like, so that's a great jumping on point. And that's important too, because I feel like as much as we enjoyed 2007 in the moment when it came out, and as much as as we still do, it has its moments. We talked about that last episode. I kind of feel like it was a little bit harder to jump into because when Aaliyah watched 2007 TMNT, she was cool, but I mean, I could tell she wasn't totally interested. First live action Ninja Turtles, I could get her to watch that at a certain age. We took her to see Mutant Mayhem with us when we went to go see it, and she was along for the ride the whole way. Like there was just so much that really engaged her as someone who didn't watch this property or wasn't really interested in Ninja Turtles like that. And I feel like this film is a great jumping on point. Is it 100% accurate to the comic book roots? No, but it doesn't have to be. And that's something that me and you as comic book fans understand. That's something that there's people out there who will still stand and wave their flag. I'm just waving flags all over the place today. that no, it has to be a certain way. April has to be this and that and this. It's like, no, man. The main thing is, does it maintain the integrity of the characters while telling a new fun story that isn't freaking boring? And yes, 100% it does. The thing that really messed me up though, I don't like Splinter as a comedic character, man. Like no, like shout out to Jackie Chan and everything he's done, but no, No, man, this is not my Splinter. This is not how I want Splinter to be. It drove me nuts. Drove me nuts.
Yeah, I wrote here in my notes. It felt like Richard Pryor is Splinter.
Oh, that was that I kind of wish we got Richard Pryor and Splinter. But you know he'd be cussing like motherfucker.
Well, because it's because especially the flashback scenes when he first gets
Oh my
mutated.
gosh. Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I think Splinter is probably my biggest beef with this movie. Like, it's just
Mhm.
the design and everything with like the oversized glasses, Jackie Chan's voice performance, the whole thing that, like, you know, this whole like anti-human bias thing. It's just like it took it way too, also, like, you know, this has, I also don't like the idea that these turtles have no real connect. This is one of the problems I had with the reboot, right? The Michael
Right.
Bay movies, is that this idea of like Splinter learns ninjutsu from an old book, and then he teaches them.
Yeah.
And it's like, here it's like there's a book, and then there's like they watch like kung fu movies, and it's like, I mean,
And they became
to
Ninja Masters.
to this movie's credit, though, I will say this: like, when they actually do fight, it doesn't seem like they actually know what they're doing. So that was one thing I think in that worked in its favor of that. It's just like, okay, so the you know, you train them to quote unquote fight, but they don't actually know what they're doing when they actually have to get into real fight. So I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah.
Not what I think would work for Ninja Turtles. Like, if it's something else, I think that'd be great. But for what we associate with the Ninja Turtles, like, I feel like that was kind of disservice to the core concept of these characters. And, you know, I think you need to have that connection to ninjutsu in some ways. Like, either, if, as ridiculous as it is in the first movie, with him learning ninjutsu by mimicking the moves from his cage, it still works in this
It
bizarre
does.
world.
It does.
And, like, you watch the 90 movie, and you see that little rat puppet like doing the kicks and everything. You buy into it.
Pizza. Oh man.
You
You
buy
do
into
buy
it, though.
into it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
I mean,
exactly it.
I think one of the best, and then, you know, the 87, they decided, well, let's just combine Splinter and Hamato Yoshi into
Hamato
one
Yoshi.
character, which
Mhm.
works too. Like, although then you get in the question of like the mutagen has this weird thing where it's like, oh, it's the animal you most recently came into contact with. So it doesn't really, that still doesn't make sense to me. Didn't make sense to me as a
Yeah.
kid. Doesn't make sense to me now. But honestly, I think the IDW reboot, it hit on the perfect idea. It's this idea of like, you know, no, they're reincarnated. Splinter and his sons were in feudal Japan, and then
I
they
started
were,
reading that. Not like I actually got a deal on like a whole bunch of the trades, and I finally started watching IDW, and I 100% loved the concept of it being reincarnation.
I know. And when I first heard about it, I'm like, this is stupid. And then I read it, I'm like, no, actually, this works.
No,
This really works.
Yeah, yeah. When you read it on a page, it's kind of like, but when you read the story, it 100%. Yeah, that makes so much more sense compared to these animals learn ninjutsu and then they mutate. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's already a wild story anyway.
Mm.
But no, the ninja part of the turtles gets glossed over so much. I mean, it's in their name. It's obviously always a given. They can fight. But the fact that not only did they learn how to fight this way, but then like you said, when they actually go to try to fight, they're a mess. I respected it because it was funny in those scenes that they were so terrible, but then also it showed their growth throughout the film as they started again going back to they started gelling more as a unit and understanding more and their weaknesses and their strengths. But yeah, no man, I don't need Splinter reading it in a book as he's turning into this nerdy little rat. And
Mhm.
I did not like the distrust of the humans either because the thing was Splinter was like, look, y'all three big ass turtle or four big ass turtles. Y'all can't go out in New York City like that. Y'all gonna get killed. Like that was enough distrust.
Mhm.
But for him to be like humans are bad, like, and that be the constant, like humans are bad, humans are bad, humans are bad. So naturally, what's the turtles going to do? They want to go hang out with the humans because they're bad. Like that's what they've been told their whole life. So it works, but it doesn't at the same
Um,
time.
as annoying as it got, though, the the milk joke did make me laugh.
Yes, absolutely.
Just the idea that this is the thing, this is the one thing Splinter's the most obsessed with, that humans are going to try to milk you.
That is Seth Rogen 100% all day long. He's like, no, we gotta leave the milk joke in. We gotta leave it in there. We gotta keep it in.
Also,
I won't budge on
did you catch the Paul Rudd joke in there where he's given an introducing credit?
that. Yes, I did. Oh man, Paul Rudd, never.
Oh, it's funny that about Splinter's look. It was based on his look was actually based on Danny DeVito and the dude from The Big Lebowski. And honestly, now I kind of want to see Danny DeVito Splinter
as Michael Bay. He might do it. He might do it.
Bring him back just for that.
He takes checks for anything. I do want to say though, this movie finally gave us something. Michael Bay films aside, because I'm pretty sure they were in there. They gave us Bebop and Rocksteady.
Yeah, they were Out of the Shadows.
Yeah. So I didn't mess with Out of the Shadows, but they gave us Bebop and Rocksteady, and they were awesome because we got John Cena as Rocksteady, and of course Seth Rogen as Bebop, and it was everything that my little 1987 heart wanted them to be. And honestly, like the whole the Superfly's entire gang, I really thought was really well done. I didn't care for Scumbug because it was a roach, but I mean, whatever. But I really thought it was cool because, again, going back to the Archie comics, the Ninja Turtles Adventures, they had the Mighty Mutanimals, and a lot of the characters that's in this movie were people that were introduced in that group when in the early '90s when that comic was out, like Leatherhead, Wingnut, Mondo Gecko was a big one. And Ray Fillet and Genghis Frog, man. So seeing those characters,
I had all those toys, man.
yeah. I definitely had Mondo. I definitely had Mondo for sure because I love Mondo. I love his look and everything. So seeing them come from the TV series and then go to the comic book page is really cool as a kid, and then seeing them come to life on the big screen finally. Which is just something I just never thought. Well, yeah, I was like, they're never going to get to those characters, you know. And then when they actually pulled it off, I thought that was very, very cool. And excuse me. And I really did like the plot of the film with Superfly and everything. Also, shout out to Ice Cube, man. Shout out to Ice Cube. Superfly, I don't recall ever seeing any version of him in other Turtles properties that I remembered, but I really enjoyed his character. They did the whole "I'm super big, and you got to beat me" at the end, but it also was very comical and very well done at the end of the movie when they had to take down Superfly. So
no,
go ahead.
I'm pretty sure Superfly was just created for this because right in the obviously in the I don't know if you ever did in the comics, but in the 87 series, Stockman becomes a fly, right? So
yes, yeah.
So here, I think they just took that idea and just separated Stockman from the Fly character and created Superfly instead. Is what I think they did,
and that makes sense. But I really enjoyed Superfly, and the turtles in this film. This is probably the purest, youngest version of the turtles we've ever gotten. Like as far as we're just kids and we're just out here bopping around and everything else. And they were funny. They were getting on each other's nerves. They were acting like brothers. But there's a lot of things that work in this movie. And again, you got to hit on the team, and they totally hit on the team. Voice acting was great, and I really felt like all the characters again, despite being Splinter's kids, that they really shine in their own ways.
Yeah, there was this really Seth Rogen said that he was a fan of this property growing up, and he said that he had always fixated on the teenage part of that, and like even the teaser trailer, it said like it was like from permanent teenager Seth Rogen, I think is what the tagline said. And
Nice.
you could tell he really did zero in on the teenager aspect. Like you said, this is the youngest that I think the turtles have ever felt in any incarnation. I mean, like even like I think the most of the time I think they feel like maybe even though they've always been said to be like around 15, I think a lot of times when we've seen them, they feel like they're more 17, 18, 19 or so. Like they feel like the
Right.
old
Late teens.
teenagers. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Whereas this one, I think they really felt like they were 13, 14 years old in this. I think that so if that was something they were
Middle
going for,
schoolers.
yeah, almost, yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm not the biggest, like, I understand what they're going for. I can appreciate it for what it is. It's not my preferred version of the Turtles. I do like them being a little bit older, but I can appreciate why they were going this way that they did.
Yeah. And again, I think as far as for the younger audience, they're easier to relate to because when there are
Mhm.
these cool late teenagers that they've always been, like then they're the older kids who don't want to hang out with them. But these versions of the turtles, I honestly think my daughter could see herself hanging out with these turtles,
Mhm.
honestly, if she really thought about it. So I totally see why they went that route as well.
Now, I will say about the voice acting though, I wasn't the
Mhm.
biggest fan of Shimon Brown Jr. as Michelangelo. I felt like I mean, his good enough actor in his own right, but I just feel like his voice doesn't really fit my image of Mikey.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I was just having so much fun with the visuals and with the constant gags because the movie just moves has a great pacing to it. It didn't feel like there was any slowdown. So I feel like from the moment it starts, it just continues to go and there's no drag and there's no narration at the beginning to really like the only part that slows down is maybe when they're talking about the origins of the turtles, like
Mhm.
maybe a little bit. But other than that, I feel like the pacing is great. So I didn't get too bogged down by the voice acting, but I can hear what you mean.
Yeah. And this one, we get and speaking with the, going with the younger type of approach, we get the youngest version of April we've ever seen, where she is literally a contemporary of theirs. She is the same age as them in this. Um, I don't know. What did you think of their take on April?
I thought it was very unique because the anxiety is something that and I don't know if you've watched Inside Out too, but anxiety is something that really that we all have come to in 2024. Everybody deals with anxiety. It's a known fact. We all have to deal with it in our own ways, and it's something that we confront in our even our everyday lives. So seeing April also have the anxiety as far as being confident and being able to speak up for herself in different situations, I I think again there's a lot of people out there who immediately related to her on that front where before it was 87 it's like oh here's some cleavage, here's my little camera, boop boop boop, and then like in the 90s film it's Judith Hogue, and the 91 was a different actress but it's still like sexy April, friend of the turtles, and then they brought back Judith Hogue, but it's always with April. The 2012 series did a little bit of this as well because April was probably in high school in the 2012 series. So she was a little bit closer to the Turtles' age as well. So she had high school problems as well as being Ninja Turtles' friend. So I think it's important for that representation to show the heroine of the film actually really kind of going through her own personal struggles that a lot of people can relate to, and being and seeing April being able to overcome that towards the end of the film. I think that was a big win, um win in itself, just as much as a win as the turtles overcoming everything and defeating Superfly at the end, because it shows that just as the turtles overcame this huge monster who was destroying New York City, um April overcame her fears of social anxiety and started becoming her own self and coming into her own, and that is also just as important as a win for her as the Turtles saving New York. So I thought it was really cool how they did April, honestly.
I'm not I'm not the biggest fan of this version of April. I do like her being like kind of like a bigger sister to the Turtles. I think is my
Yeah.
preferred take on her. So I think, you know, the 2003 series I think did a good job of really nailing what I feel like April should be to the Turtles. Like she is kind of like this big sister to them. Whereas I think in, you know, the 91 movie, you know, she felt like a little bit too old to be
Yeah.
really hanging out with a bunch of teenagers. Whereas the 2003 series, I feel like it has this nice balance. It makes sense why she'd be interested in someone like Casey, and all that kind of worked. In this one though, I've only seen a little bit of the 2012 series, but they also had, you know, you're right, they did have, she was closer in age, and there was kind of this romantic type of tension thing between, I think it was Donnie in that one actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Donnie.
Yeah, and I'm not the biggest fan of that. And then here it's Leo, and and there's that romantic tension between her and Leo, which I really don't like. I really didn't like that. I mean, call me
Yeah.
specious if you will, but it didn't feel right to me.
It's cute at its base level. It's like, oh yeah, they like each other and they're friends, and animal and human aside, it's cute, but no, that doesn't work for me. April should not be the Turtles' romantic interest. She should definitely be best friend, sister kind of deal. So that also um that also bothered me about the 2012 series, and I was glad they kind of moved away, because then it was like Donnie had a crush, but it was never like April fulfilling it. It's not like they fulfilled it here, but at the same time, it was kind of like, oh yeah, cutesy moment with Leo and April,
Mhm.
you know. Um, so I don't like that portrayal either. Like let's keep the species apart. Like I get it. I get that they're human like, and they're just green, and they could just be like you and me, but no thank you. No
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you. No rule 34 stuff on this pod. Absolutely not.
It was
Absolutely not.
it was getting me. I I'm ashamed to say that when I was watching this and thinking about the ramifications of the turtles in a relationship with a human, I did start to get flashbacks to The Shape of Water and the scene where she talks
Ugh.
about how.
Ugh. Yeah. No thank you.
And on that note, we are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Since you're listening to this show, I already know you love watching superhero movies and TV shows, and you just might enjoy superhero comics. But how about superhero novels? I'm giving away 2 free superhero novels and 1 free superhero short story. Visit percivalconstantine.com/SCP to get access to Vanguard, Heroes Forged, the first novel in my own Avengers and X-Men inspired superhero novel series, and Ronin Born, my cyberpunk superhero novel set in a futuristic Japan. I'm also throwing in Fire and Lightning, a free prequel story to my new Power Rangers inspired superhero series Omega Knights. So visit percivalconstantine.com/SCP, those are just the letters SCP, to get started, or click on the link in the show notes. And now, on with the show. And after that unfortunate image that I put all in your heads right before the break, we are back. And it, sorry, it's still working. All right. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
No thank you. No thank
Anyway, getting back on track now.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. You mentioned the animation style, and I think the animation style here is really cool. Like how it's kind of got like this mix of like, it kind of reminded me a bit of Spider-Verse, right? It has kind of
Yeah.
like this mix of almost like, you know, comic art mixed with like
Yes.
CGI. And then we even got like that montage, which kind of felt like a 2D scroller game. So it felt like they were pulling from all sorts of different versions of the Turtles in that.
Yeah. I immediately was like, oh, Spider-Verse. This has big Spider-Verse vibes. And those 2 movies have meant so much to me since their release, and the style and the amount of hours that I will just throw on a Spider-Verse movie and just have it in the background and just look up, and doesn't even matter what's going on in the movie. I literally would just sit there and just transfix on the animation and all the work that went into that. Um, Seeing the turtles in this style was very cool for me. Obviously, it's not exactly like Spider Verse, but the Spider Verse influences are there. So, instead of it just being straight 2D or 3D animation like the 2007 film was. I like that it was still 3D, but like you said, they went side scroller at one point. But they also were still paying homage to different eras of the Turtles throughout the film, which I found to be kind of cool. It was small little notes here and there, but as someone who's watched as much Turtles as we have, it's
Mhm.
kind of difficult to miss it. So I did appreciate that.
So let's talk a little bit about the design they used for the turtles themselves.
Okay.
What were your thoughts on the look of the turtles themselves? Because like the animation, I love the animation. The designs, a little bit iffier on. What did you think?
It took me a second to get used to it. I immediately hated Raph's full headband because, again, I'm not a purist about everything, but it's like no, why has he got to wear that? And I felt the same thing about Tales of the TMNT, because he wears the same thing with the little skull cap, and I was like, I get you want to make like Raph, and like Raph's the leader on that show, I believe. I get that they want to make
Oh,
Raph
I think you're talking
stand
about
out.
Rise.
Or yeah, Rise of the TM. Thank you. I'm sorry. The little skull cap. I just want them all to have same matching bandanas and stuff like that. So that immediately threw me off. I did like the color palettes because again, they were inspired by those same '87 Playmates toys that we had as kids. They weren't all the same color. They were very definitive in their ways. They didn't make Donatello brown, but Donatello was never brown. I don't know why he was brown as a child on the figure, but whatever. Um, but I did like their little quirks because again, one of the things that bothered me before I started watching 2012 Turtles was Donatello has the gap in his teeth. And it was always like, why does the guy have a gap in his teeth? That's so ridiculous. And in this version, like Donnie wears glasses. And it's like how does that work? Like they're scared of the real world, but I mean, obviously he found them in the sewer, and like there's things to be explained away. But I really felt like as the film went on and you got past those little quirks about each one, I really feel like it made them stand out in their own ways. That made them unique to their character. As silly as some of it may be, just from looking at a poster and knowing what the turtles look like on one hand, and then seeing how they're made in this iteration. I ended up liking the looks by the end of the film compared to when the film first started, and I'm like analyzing. I'm like, okay, why does he look like that? What's this? Because I'm definitely that guy. I'd be like, okay, did they get the turtles look right? And that's just something that you do, unfortunately, when you're a super fan.
Yeah, I'm like I try not to be a purist about this stuff, and I feel like I don't really like the look of the characters. I think that the look they don't go as overboard as the Michael Bay movies went, where they had like all this junk on them, which was I think
Right.
just like unnecessary.
Yes.
But there is some superfluous stuff that isn't really necessary, right? Like, you know, Raph having that full headband thing. I agree, that doesn't really need to be there. Also, him being so much bigger than the others is just, I get what you're trying to emphasize. Like with Rise, they're trying to emphasize the fact that he's maybe the older one here. He's maybe the tougher one. He's like the,
Mm-hmm.
you know, he's the brick of the team or something like that. Like I get that. But the way it's not to this extent. Like I think they pushed it too far. Because I'm looking at this model sheet of them, and Raph is like almost twice as big as the other ones. And so, I mean, it's a little bit
really
too
is.
much. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't get that either. Because the character sheet you're talking about, like the Leo and Mike and Don all look very meek compared to
Mm-hmm.
him, and like I have a feeling that Raphael might be the most popular turtle at this point, maybe like compared to like when we were kids, everybody loved Leo. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like if you took a poll out of like 50 people, I think Raph's going to win as the most popular
I think so
turtle.
too.
So I think that is more of them emphasizing this is the most popular turtle and this is the turtle we want to focus y'all in on. Cause I don't know, like depending on where this property goes, like could we see individual spin-off films? Could we see a Raph film and a Leo film and a Leo and Donnie film? Because I can't imagine them getting separate films, even though they should. So I could definitely see where they're trying to draw your eye towards Raphael more for purposes maybe like that. But then also at the core, man, like he's the best looking character. They're trying to sell toys, so they're trying to sell Raph toys. So I also feel like that probably went into it as well.
Maybe. But I think the one I hate the most is Donnie's design. Like, and this also ties back into the Michael Bay films, like you're gonna give the smart nerdy turtle glasses. It's just like it's just so stereotypical.
Yeah, yeah, and it doesn't. It's an injustice to Donatello, honestly, because again, this character's been around since 1984. Like, usually, if people like, he's going to be the last turtle picked out of the group normally, because there's going to be your people who do like Donatello, especially in the Nintendo first game, because he has the long reach with the staff. So people are going to like him for that. But usually, like, Donatello isn't the favorite turtle. He's going to be the last one picked for your team. So I don't like that they emphasized his nerdiness so much, because the thing with Donnie is, yes, he's the brains, but something the IDW series does so well is, yeah, he's the brains, but he's just as great as a fighter as any of his other brothers, because he has that intellectual mind as well as the physical prowess of being trained along with his other brothers in Splinter. So I do think it does a disservice. I get it along the lines of, oh, there's a turtle that reminds me of me. Like, I'm the nerdy kid, you know. Again, it's relatable for kids, and maybe even some adults. They can relate to Donatello being the backwards one a little bit. But as a fan of the team as a whole, makes them look weaker. Even though ultimately we know what Donatello's about, and this is just the early rendition that we're looking at right now. But it makes him look weaker, and it just does a disservice to who Donatello ultimately is. Now, yes, in the film he had his bright spots, and yes, we're hoping for sequels where we'll get to expand more on all these characters, but it doesn't do him any favors.
Yeah. What do you think about some other stuff here? Like, there's this little ninja rap reference in there too. What'd you think of that?
I laugh so hard. I laugh so. I mean, I love the fact that they can. Because even when I was a kid, when we were kids, when Ninja Rap came out, like the first time you saw it in the theater, and Vanilla Ice was like on that brink of kind of being cool, and like Ice Ice Baby was out, but then it got played out very quickly, and so it became more of the joke. But then as we got older, we went back and visited. It's like, you know what? It was kind of cool to see Turtles Vanilla Ice in the movie, and they do Ninja Turtle moves and dance moves, and it's fine. To see them call that out, like, I laughed so hard. Like, I laughed this whole movie, honestly. I think the movie's hilarious. It's definitely the most hilarious Turtles movie, start to finish, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I think this is it. Overall, it's a very funny movie. It's a very fun movie too. I did like that they found a way to do something different than the Shredder and the Foot Clan, but still have it stay true to the Turtles' roots. Like we talked about last week with TMNT, one of my biggest complaints about that is you're not going to use the Shredder. Fine, I get that. That's totally cool with me, but, you know, pull something else from the lore. Here they did. They pulled something else from the lore. They pull in the idea of this mutant gang created by Superfly, and we bring in all these characters who have these ties to the Turtles. Which, side note, Rose Byrne is Leatherhead. Was not expecting that.
No, I wasn't either in the credits, because I'm a thanks to Marvel, I just normally sit there and let the movie theater empty out regardless. And I was sitting there, I was like, wait, Rose Byrne as Leatherhead? Like, I love Rose Byrne, but I wouldn't have guessed that in a million years. And also, this is the first Turtles film that we've gotten other mutants, like, honestly, because like it's always just been the Turtles and then Toka and Razor, but like, and again, Michael Bay movies aside, I don't know what happened. I don't even remember the first one, Perry. Uh, but like, we get introduced
I
to
envy you.
we get introduced to all these other mutants all at once. And again, the Turtles thought they were alone, and it was the same thing in Spider-Verse when Peter and Miles meet for the first time before Peter gets killed. Spoilers. And he's like, "You're like me," and that was like the common theme every time a Spider Person meets a Spider Person, like, "You're like me," and it was their "You're like me" moment in this film where it's like, oh shit, there's more of us than just us, because Splinter had been sheltering them from the world, in this version. So I thought that was very cool.
Yeah. And also, of them all, I mean, Paul Rudd as Mondo Gecko, I think was definitely my favorite, my standout of them.
Yes, yes. I love Mondo. Like I said, I always loved his character design as a kid, and seeing him come to life in this way. And then ultimately, as the team realizes that Superfly, they don't want to follow Superfly anymore, and they join the Turtles cause. I always do love when the bad guys suddenly realize the error in their ways and they try to make good. It doesn't always work for the plot of certain films, but I really felt like the turn towards the good really worked out for the mutanimals in this. I thought it was
Well,
very
in this
cool.
one, it made a lot of sense because, they're in a similar position as the Turtles are. So they've experienced what the world is like, and they feel like they don't have any other choice, right? Because the only one who's ever, shown them any sort of care and attention is Superfly. So I thought it made total sense why they would, go with him eventually and then, kind of find their own way after that. And that does bring us to the ending of this movie too, when they end up enrolling in a high school. I mean, well, okay, you got some thoughts. So I'll let you go first on that.
I understand that the turtles just want to be normal, and again, they've been sheltered, and obviously the first time they're in the school earlier in the film, like you can tell, it's like all they want to do is go to school. They just want to be normal kids. I get that, and I'm fine with this ending where it's like, oh, New York City loves you, and you get to go to school now, and you get to go to prom. It's cool, it's cute, but I'm not saying go back to the sewers and no one recognize you, man. But at the same time, it's like, mm, I I get it, but I don't. I don't need turtles going to school. They don't need to go to school. Like I understand this is what they want, and they're children. I understand they're children, but going to school being their thing that their biggest dream at that time, it kind of bugged me, not enough to ruin the film, but that's probably my biggest nitpick next to Splinter is the fact that they all just dream to go into freaking school. And it's like, no, nobody dreams about going to school, man. Nobody wants to go to school. Like I know they glamorize it on what TV they might have had. It's like, oh, young love and dances and football games and stuff, and like they want to go for the fun stuff in school, but school ain't that fun, man. So I did not like that at all. I didn't.
Well, see,
like it.
I think that actually makes a lot of sense. This is actually one of the things I did like about the film is the fact that, and like we were saying with TMNT, I like the idea that we're trying to show something different with the turtles. So in TMNT, it was this idea of, Mikey and Don trying to get, working real jobs and trying to have jobs that still allow them to function as part of society, even while they still have to keep secret from society. And in the IDW comics, I'm not sure how long along you are, but after the first 100 issues, when they had kind of a soft reboot, not really a reboot per se, but it was just more like a new direction, like a relaunch. And that was when they had them, they had this idea of like Mutant Town, and like mutants are out and they exist and everyone knows about them. So that was interesting. And the turtles are like kind of at the root of building this new society. It's an interesting idea. And I haven't read too far along in that relaunch period, so I'm not sure how it turns out or how it goes, but I had some issues with how it was handled the way it was, but it was still an interesting idea. And just like this too, I think this is a really interesting idea. And I think the fact that I totally get what you're saying, and I think you're right. I agree with you. Nobody does want to go to school, yes, but on the other hand, you look at it from their perspective. They've been sheltered their whole lives. They've only been interacting with each other. The only ideas they have of school comes from TV and movies and comics and all this. So like if your only perception of school is from stuff like, like we said before, like Smallville or Dawson's Creek or,
Yes.
or whatever.
Boy Meets
Or
World.
like Boy Meets World or like, or Donnie being a fan of like anime, and like anime is chock full of like, high school type stuff. So
Yes, it is.
if that's your only impression of what high school is like, and you've spent the rest of your life being sheltered in a sewer with your brothers and your father, and that's the only interaction you've had with the outside world, then I can get why you'd want to go to school. I can totally see why they'd want to do that, because they're looking at it, they're like, oh my God, look at this. And I think that end credit scene really kind of shows it, right? They go to school and they see like, oh, there are all these different clubs we can join where there are people who are just like us that we can hang out with. And, it's not like with my brothers who I love, but they have nothing in common with me. So I think the movie did a good job of really making me understand why they would covet something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not against it. Like I said, it didn't ruin it for me, but it, I just not the dismount I was hoping for. Not, but
No,
I get it. I totally get it, and it gives them a lot more to do as far as sequels go, because now they're in a school setting, so there's so many things they can do with that, and kind of build off because there's always drama in school, so it's so much easier to have them in that setting versus sending them back to the sewers or something else. So I'm on board as far as the franchise goes, but again, I rather than not have been like, I just want to go to school, but I mean, you got to start somewhere, I guess.
but I think too, because we get teased the Shredder at the end here, and
Mm-hmm.
this does make me think of the plot of the original movie, where you did have Shredder, working with these, recruiting these wayward teenagers to become members of the Foot Clan. And I don't know, that's one of the things that sticks out to me of that first film, is something that feels like kind of out of place from the rest of the movie. It doesn't quite, it feels like that was a thing, the whole Danny subplot and all that feels that felt like the studio hand reaching in and saying like, hey, we have to direct this more towards kids. So, and
Yeah,
with
I agree.
with this, but if you had something like this set up with the Turtles being in high school already and being students there, and then you've got Shredder coming in and recruiting wayward students into the Foot Clan, well, I think then you have the potential for some pretty interesting dramatic stuff going on.
Because Shredder could potentially get a turtle, maybe.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like you could see something like, and this was actually, I think this was I'd seen this mentioned somewhere as being like an idea, like Mikey feeling like dejected from the rest of the group. I think it was like for a possible sequel to TMNT, where he felt like kind of like, unappreciated by his brothers. So he ended up, being kind of like wooed by the Foot Clan. And there is kind of precedence for that. Like in the, in the Image series from the mid 90s, you had Raphael take control of the Foot Clan and become the new Shredder. Like he was using it for different purposes, but still he did become part in the IDW series. Splinter takes over the Foot Clan. So there's precedent in that for the comics. And I think the idea of having this other side where you do have someone like the Shredder pulling some of the Turtles away from Splinter, I think there's obviously precedent for that in real life. And I think there's also, it could be really interesting to see how that happens in these movies. And I think someone like Raph could possibly, or even Mikey, could be susceptible to something like that.
Or even Donatello, I could possibly see that as well.
Yeah.
So yes, I do think there is potential there, because honestly, you could even go so far, and now we're getting into some fantasy casting, I guess. Like go so far as if one of the turtles is wooed by the Shredder and the Foot Clan, where the second film ends with that turtle actually still in the Foot Clan. So it's like if you have a true break where it's like, obviously they're going to have to reconnect and become a team again, but that would be something that would be a little crazy, an unexpected direction, because this movie, again, it's funny, it's feel good, it has a great pace, it tells a fun story, and then to have a darker ending, return of or oh wow, Empire-esque kind of sad downbeat note, to have one of the turtles like leave the group and like go and align themselves with the Shredder and the Foot Clan. That would be kind of wild, especially after this fun movie, and then to have that downbeat note, especially going into the third film, where it's like, yo, like one of the turtles is gone, and there's only three of them, um, and that could all stem from school. So I see what you're putting down. I see what
Yeah,
you're
I think
putting down.
like, but I do agree with you. Like, this is not my preferred interpretation of the turtles. Like, I do prefer them, the classic thing of them, being in the sewers or the abandoned subway station, and
Hmm.
being actual ninjas.
Right,
Like, yeah, that is my preferred
competent
interpretation.
ninjas,
Yeah, yeah.
competent ninjas. Yeah,
And not having a romantic relationship with April. That, because this also pretty much makes it very hard to bring in Casey Jones in a way that's anything other than an antagonist.
right.
So
He's like, oh, Casey's trying to steal my girl, and I'm like, no,
yeah, yeah.
bro, no,
In
no,
fact, didn't we
no.
have wasn't there a Casey cameo in this with like what wouldn't I could
Yes,
yeah, I remember there being something like that.
yeah, there was a Casey cameo. Yes, there was.
Yeah. And I didn't like I don't like it when they downplay Casey. Like, that was going back to the 87 series, that's one of the things I don't like about it, where Casey is just,
He's a
he's just like,
maniac
yeah,
in a
yeah.
cartoon, like
Hmm.
this emotionless maniac. So that actually threw me off about the 90 movie, because Casey was
Right?
such a big part, and I was like, this isn't Casey Jones. Like, Casey Jones, I know, showed up in a full Jason mask. He's like ready to kick some butt, right? And like, he literally just want to beat people with sporting goods stuff. And in this Casey in the movie he was fun. He was thoughtful. I mean, yeah, he was a big old jerk still, and him and Raph had like were constantly butting heads throughout the original film. But it threw me off because I hadn't known a Casey who actually had a personality compared to
Mm.
the '87 cartoon.
Yeah, and then you read the comics or you watch the 2003 series, and you realize, like, oh man, Casey is really integral to the turtles. And I feel like
Hmm.
this movie forgot about that. And I think the Out of the Shadows had the same thing, because then they have Casey in there, but he's, kind of useless. Like, I love Stephen Amell, but he just, like, the way that they, and I don't necessarily blame him for it, but it's just like the way they had him play that character just was not my. Again, Chris Evans in the TMNT movie, uh, amazing job. And I forgot to mention this last time, but is it just me, or do you think Chris Evans maybe has the record of playing the most characters from comic book properties?
He's got to be up there. He
I
definitely
mean,
has got to be up there for sure.
because we got Captain America, Human Torch, we got the Losers,
Hmm.
um, we got
Casey
Casey
Jones.
Jones,
That's four.
um, Scott Pilgrim,
Yeah, yeah. He was one of the evil
and
boyfriends. Yep.
Push. That was another one. Like, it wasn't originally a comic book, but it was, superhero s. So Push, he was
Yeah.
also in that too. So that's like 6 different superhero type characters he's played.
The man knows what he likes, man.
Hmm.
Man knows what he likes. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Any other
Uh,
things you wanted to mention about Mutant Mayhem?
um, I'm excited for the sequel. Because again, I want to see where the film goes next. Um, the music was freaking incredible throughout the whole film. The score was actually done by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. And I'm someone who, as a rap artist, I notice musical cues, especially when they're integrated in the film, and I just thought that the score was just really well done because it had your hip hop tracks, but at the same time, it also just it just it was just as a big a part of every scene where it wasn't overpowering, but at the same time, it's like you recognize the music's impact on what was
Hmm.
going on, and it wasn't just like let's just throw some random zip zaps and some horns here and get a little lower here, and like I could tell that again they took time with the soundtrack and with the score to really help it complement the film. So I want to shout out to the score for sure,
Okay.
um because I think it's dope. But I there's a lot that they can build on from here. I hope they go away from the romance for sure. Um, maybe make Splinter a little bit more serious, but probably won't get that one. Um, but no, I think it's a nice start, and I think it's something that I can look forward to seeing. Hopefully, a couple more films of this. Because I thought it was they did a really good job. Because I went in low expectations again, because I hadn't had a lot of exposure to the newer properties, and I knew who was attached, and I thought it would be good, but my expectations were blown away for sure.
Yeah, I think my expectations were a little bit higher going in than yours. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't say I was let down. It's just like I was expecting something a little bit different,
Yeah.
especially knowing how big of a fan Rogan is of the original stuff. Like I thought it would have been closer to the comic interpretation, or maybe even closer to the IDW stuff. So I was a little bit surprised by what we got. Not in a bad way. Like, again, this is not my preferred interpretation of the Turtles. At the same time, I fully acknowledge that, you know what, this isn't for me. Like you said, like, you know, this is something you could see your daughter getting into. And, you
Right.
know, I could see my kids probably getting into this version of the Turtles more than, I mean, I'll always tell them, you're wrong. The 2003 version is better. But it's like, I remember John Stewart, you know, years ago, he had George Lucas on, and he was talking about the Star Wars prequels. And John Stewart said, he's like, you know, it's like, you know, people my generation, we don't really care much for the prequels, but you know, younger generation, they love them. And he said how he's like, my nephew tells me that, you know, The Phantom Menace is his favorite movie, and always tell him, no, you're wrong. A New Hope is your favorite movie. And I kind of feel like that with this. Like, if my son comes and says, like, you know, I like Mutant Mayhem a lot better than the 91 movie, I'm like, no, I'm sorry, you're wrong, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to have to watch that one again. No, I can
Yeah.
totally see that.
But yeah, I get
I can totally see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not for me, but I can enjoy it for what it is, and it's at least not offensive as a Turtles fan, like in the way that I felt like the Michael Bay movies were, or like
Absolutely
Next
not.
Mutation.
Absolutely not. Do you want to rank the films before we wrap everything
Yeah,
up?
let's do that. So what would you? So we got. Let's just run down the list. We got the original 3 live action ones. Then we
Yep.
have TMNT, and then we got
Mhm.
the Michael Bay ones, and then we
Yep.
have Mutant Mayhem. So what would your ranking of those be?
The Michael Bay's at the bottom. So Out of the Shadows would be the bottom, and then the other one would be next. Um, um, I have a soft spot in my heart for 3, as ridiculous and madcap as it is, and I know the Turtles costumes weren't as good and was a cheaper budget and everything, but Back to the Future is my favorite trilogy, so I'm a sucker for a time travel film. So I'm going to go ahead and put 3 in there. So Turtles 3. Then I would probably say um Return of the, or Secret of the Ooze will be above that. Then Mutant Mayhem, then 2007, and then 1990 would be my favorite. Would be my order.
I think mine would probably be the same, right? So I got 1990 right, obviously number 1 with a bullet. Like we said before, that
Yes.
movie's, you know, damn near perfect.
Yes.
And still amazingly holds up effects wise, the suits, everything holds up really well in that movie. Um,
Years ahead of their time when they
yeah,
did that
yeah,
film.
yeah. The suit work, the animatronics, the puppetry, all of it just works and still really holds together.
And
Um,
the fight choreography, man, like even the
yeah,
whole foot at the second time around shop with a Foot Clan fight and the fire and everything, like literally, like if I had to pick a scene of a movie to watch once a day, it would be that from the moment that they all jump raft to the end when they're leaving the building in the van. Like the fight choreography is just so good, that whole sequence.
I mean, I think they probably should have sped up those sequences a little bit because it does look a little bit slow in
Hmm.
retrospect. But other than that, it's, you know, very well done. Casey Jones, man, I love Elias Koteas as Casey Jones in that movie. That he's just
Hmm.
perfect. The banter, all of it, like that. Yeah, number 1 with the bullet, absolutely. I think,
Ninja kick the damn rabbit.
yeah, exactly. Um, Shredder's fuchsia suit aside, though, it doesn't hold up.
Nah, that shit was clean. That shit was clean. That gave me Prince vibes, man. I can't be mad at him for that.
That's true. It was that era, so I can understand that. I think a little bit down the list, like probably kind of sort of a distant second would be TMNT, like 2007 TMNT. It doesn't rise to the highs, but I think it is the best one aside from the 1990 movie that we've ever gotten. After that, I go back and forth between Mutant Mayhem and Secret of the Ooze. I think they're probably about equal. Secret of the Ooze is kind of goofy, but it is still more like what I envisioned the Turtles to be than Mutant Mayhem. Whereas Mutant Mayhem is obviously a better movie, I feel, but it's just not quite what I want out of the Turtles. So
The
those are probably, like,
elimination of their weapons as an adult really bothers me, which I didn't realize as a kid that they eliminate them using their weapons on people.
Mhm.
But now that I know that they made a conscious decision to not use their weapons, and then watching it, it's like it kind of takes me out of Ooze a little bit.
Yeah,
now.
yeah. And then after that, we got the. It's been so long since I've seen 3, so it's hard to figure out where I'd place it. But I think I would probably put it above the Bay films, just for the fact that it had the, the classic Turtles actors. We had Judith Hogan, Elias Koteas back. Even though I
Yes.
don't like that movie, like it's got those other elements in it. After
It's
that,
a mess. It's a
yeah,
mess.
probably Out of the Shadows after that, and then the first Michael Bay one at the dead last.
Okay, gotcha. Yep. So
But
we're
what
on
would
the
you
same
say is
page.
what would you say is the best animated series now?
I'm gonna still say 2012, and I know you're about to say you're
2012?
wrong. It's 2003, but 2012 is my jam, man.
No, like I said, we've only just started watching 2012, and we're only like a few episodes into the first season, but I really dig it, so I can definitely see why. I mean,
Yeah.
2003 is definitely my favorite of them. And but I think honestly, I think the best interpretation we've gotten of the Turtles so far has probably been this IDW series. It's just
Oh, absolutely.
incredible.
Absolutely. Like I have been hearing about it for years. Obviously, spoilers when Donatello died, like that was a big deal, like in the comic world. So I kind of like was a little bit paying attention then. Last Ronin came out a few years ago and is a
Last
phenomenal,
Ronin was amazing.
an incredible story. Yes. I knew who the turtle was um before they revealed it at the end of the first issue, because it was kind of like, what turtle are they really going to leave behind last? I wonder. And obviously it was who it was, in case anybody out there is going to read it, because I know they're going to like do a video game and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I just
So
found out about that.
yeah, so go read Last Ronin if you want to know which turtle is last. But that story is phenomenal. Just seeing the turtles really get the care and attention that they haven't had since the Mirage days, from a major comic book studio, the way IDW has done it is incredible. And the fact that even though they finished their original run and now they've done this new reboot with new tellings of what's going on with the Turtles since the climax of the original storyline, and they're still finding ways to keep on going. Like, kudos to IDW, and kudos to um is it Eastman who's still really heavily involved with the Turtles? Because I feel like Laird has pulled back, or I got him flipped. I can't remember which one it is.
I think you might. I can't remember honestly. I
Okay.
think it might have been flipped, but whatever the case.
Yeah. But the fact that one of them is still so heavily involved, and then making sure that the Turtles are still being seen in the way that they originally envisioned them, in this day and age, is incredibly cool to me.
So yeah, it was Eastman who is still heavily involved. Although I think Laird came back in because they did that the Toys That
They
Made
did-
Us.
Yeah, and they did last.
They had that reunion there. They did.
They
for
did some last
Ronin
Ronin
together,
stuff too. Yeah, yes,
Yeah,
they did.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I was gonna say I knew that one had kind of stepped away, but he wasn't that far away. It's just that
Right.
he
yeah.
wasn't in it like Eastman was. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Kelp, thanks so much for coming on. This is a lot of fun as always.
Thank you, Perry, man. I always love coming on Superhero Cinephiles.
Yes.
Man. Always a great time.
Let's not have
Let's
another
not wait
Derek
it-
pass before he get back on.
We're not jinxing any of that. Yeah. Let's do this before another 2 years pass for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Let's get some more in 2025. Let's do that.
Okay. Absolutely. But remind people where they can find you.
I can be found on hyphenuniverse.com. All of my music, all my podcasts, all my YouTube stuff is on there. On the social medias, it's the B-Hyphen on Instagram, B-Hyphen on Facebook, and B-Hyphen BHYPHEN over on Blue Sky. And I'm still hanging around X for right now, but mostly it's the peek at trending articles and stuff. I'm trying not to use it. So there's
man.
that.
As for us, we are superherocinephiles.com and Super Cinema Pod on the socials, which mostly just Blue Sky, although we are still on Threads and Instagram, but pretty much just release announcements on there. But please feel free to follow us there. go to the website if you want to find out about being a guest yourself. Check the show notes for links to Kel's stuff, and also check out, links to my stuff. You heard in the ad, we got the promos. You can get some free books. You sign up at percivalconstantine.com/SCP. So go check those out. Thanks for listening.
Go check out my man's rating.
Absolutely. And check out my buddy's music too while you're at it.
Yeah, do that too.
All right. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. Superhero Cinephiles is produced by me, Percival Constantine. The show is created by myself and the late, great Derek Ferguson, our host emeritus. Visit us on the web at superherocinephiles.com to listen to past episodes or find out how you can be a guest yourself. Support the show by visiting our advertiser links or click the Buy Me a Coffee link on the website to make a one-time donation. We are Super Cinema Pod on both Instagram and Blue Sky, so please be sure to follow us. We'd also appreciate if you could rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and share us with your friends.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.